Welcome to Sincerely the Corrupt podcast. This is going to be the Cold-Blooded Killer series, and this chapter 1 is going to be all about motive. There's some key players in this first chapter that I want to identify for you, and the first two families that were identified is the Dane family, and that would be Matthew Dane, who is the victim, that's Jody and Mitch Dane, the siblings, and that's Gary and Pat Dane, who are the parents. And then we have the Adams family, and that would be Sally Adams, the suspect, the only suspect, and that would be Junior and Betty Adams, the parents. There's a lot that we talk about, so remember these key players. Now we have another couple key players that I kind of mentioned in this podcast, and there'll be a whole other chapter on them, but that would be Oscar Goodman. That is our mob defense attorney out of Las Vegas, and that is Max Price, that was our Missouri lawyer. This series is dedicated to Matthew Dane and Pat Dane of the Dane family. Stay tuned for episode 1, The Motive. Welcome to Sincerely the Corrupt podcast. I'm Jaisha Connor. You may have seen us on Practical Wellness Podcast, and we have now rebranded. And so I'm going to tell you why, because I've got a story to tell. And a story that I'm passionate about. And this is my nurse, Jody. You've met Sam. You've met Katie. You met Courtney out in Florida. But you've never got to meet my nurse. And I've known her for a while. We actually we grew up going to church together. I knew your parents. I know that I didn't really know Macy well until I met Macy. And she joined the Wellness Center. And it's just kind of how everything's played out. It's just, I think this is meant to be. I think we were meant to be right here today doing this today. And I'll tell you, this story hits home for me. But Jody lost her brother back in 1986. And I remember hearing that, but I didn't know the depth of it. And I remember hearing that he had been murdered, and it even wasn't that I never knew that there was somebody living an hour and a half away from us that cold-blooded did this and is just living around your family. And last weekend, after you lost your mom, you lost Pat. And I was sitting on the couch on a Saturday morning, and I was looking I don't even know what I was looking for. And your podcast came through. And I clicked on it, and I said, this is Jody? I podcast. My nurse ain't told me she did a podcast, and I don't know if I had seen it back then, and because 2020, if you remember, when that podcast came out, was the year I lost Jaden. And so I know that I wasn't maybe aware or diving into things, but it was just so crazy how that podcast came out, and I heard it, and then I immediately text Macy, but, Macy's kind of like me. She's not a morning gal. And so I was hesitantly waiting because, you just lost your mama. So I didn't want to bring up old stuff at the moment, but when I read that, it got me hot. And I eventually messaged you, and you messaged back, and I dove in that weekend, and I've been diving in ever since. I have bags under my eyes. Luckily, your daughter helped me out this morning, but it's crazy. And this podcast, I'm passionate, and I am that girl. I will be loud. And I know people might think it's for attention, but when I see something wrong, if somebody's not going to call it out, who is? And we live in a world where the fear that people portray on you will shut you up. It'll silence you. It can even make you think that you're not capable of things that you're absolutely capable of. And you will hold yourself back because other people are I wouldn't say that. Let's keep that a little more quieter. And that didn't work out in 2020, did it?
No.
And it didn't work out in 2008 when you tried. So I'm loud, and I'm going to be loud. And I think everybody involved in this now knows it because I think we've contacted about every single person that we can contact. And I'll kind of give you a little update to where we're at. And then we're going to have Jody tell us a little bit about Matt. Because where we're at is we have sent numerous amount of emails. I'm talking Dr. Phil. I'm talking, and I know how to write an email. I've learned something, and I'm okay. I will accept this positive factor about me. I have a way of compelling words. And I feel like when I use the right words to somebody that has a soul will understand what I'm talking about. So, and that's why we're sitting here today, because this story is true. It's true. And so we have sent emails out to Cold case files, of course. I've hit LVPD. We've sent emails to Las Vegas Police Department. We've sent it to the cold case files. We sent it to the sheriff, to the mayor, to anybody. Any email that I could find in Las Vegas has got that email. And then we also sent it out to ABC, 2020, Dateline, CBS, Dr. Phil, anything, all the true crime podcast, podcasters that are going to be interested in this story. And the reason that I'm doing that is because you never make change unless you're loud. And if I was quiet and if I was just, sitting back like, that was bad, but let's go sneak around and let's go, maybe dig into this a little bit. It's funny because I've had people call me and say, aren't you a little scared? Because I'll have a chapter on that mob defense attorney. I guarantee you that. We're going to hear about that. But why do you guys think I'm loud? If somebody took me out today, the whole town's going to know who it is. And
True.
I don't care. There's some things worth fighting for, and this is worth fighting for. And when I read this case file and when I started this, I feel like I'm grieving Matt. Because you learn to know him, and when you know the family, you know the person that he was. And so, Jody, I want you to tell us a little bit about your brother Matt.
Well, he was one of the most fun human beings I've ever known. He was very much an entrepreneur from the time he was a little kid. Dad caught him on the phone one time at 13 ordering concrete for his bicycle repair shop that he was going to build. So, he was just a fun kid, all around, all American, went in the Air Force, had a plan, serve his country, do his time in the Air Force, come home and work at McDonnell Douglas, retire when he was young, buy a place around the lake, and run a guide service. That's what he wanted to do. That's what he would have done. If that's what he wanted, that's what he would have done. Always had money. Little bit. I'm not talking rich, but as a kid, always had more money than Mitch and I ever had because he worked. He did whatever he needed to have some money because he wanted to do stuff. He wanted to do fun stuff. He basically, I think like any of us, he worked to provide, to earn the money to have fun and to do things for other people. So...
And he was an avid outdoorsman,
He was and very avid outdoorsman.
Even your brother and dad still were.
Yeah. When he was around 14, 15, he won the Missouri State Junior Turkey Calling Contest because that's a real thing, especially where we grew up. And when he was 16, I don't think you were supposed to compete in the adult group until you were 18, but they forced him to move up to the adult group because he was that good. He won juniors twice in a row, and so they're like, you got to go with the adults. You're too good for the kids. So he was good at whatever he was interested in and wanted to do. He was good at it. He was a good brother. He was a good son.
You can tell he was a good person.
He was a good person.
He was a good person. And you bring up he was in the Air Force. That's the reason he was in Vegas, and we've contacted the Air Force. And I want to make a little statement right here because I am going to tell you the facts of this case. I believe this case to have already solved. I believe this case to just be held up by judicial monopolization from power and money. And I will fight that all day long. And when you realize that the Air Force at that time paid out a $54,000 life insurance policy to this woman, that's mind-blowing. They paid her to kill their serviceman. And they filed a document stating that she was cleared. And she's never been cleared. And so we'll get to that. And I'll tell you, this chapter is going to be all about the motive. And I got the opportunity to spend a little time with your dad this week.
That's always a good time.
Gary is just a hoot. I just love and adore that man. He reminds me so much of my Grandpa Jones. And funny, they know each other. They were friends. They went
buddies.
to church together for a long time. So it's like I'm sitting in front of my grandpa, when I see your dad. That's just the kind of people you are. And I remember I'd been searching through this whole case file, like this entire case file. I'll tell you, I've looked at every paper at least like 5 times, and I'm trying to get it organized. We're PDF filing this, and I'm getting it all organized, but I always find something new, when I look at it. But one thing that I could never find was your dad's statement, your mom's statement, or your statement, or Mitch's statement.
And I don't know. I don't think I made an actual statement. I was 14.
Your parents made it for you.
But my parents, my parents and Mitch, I know, made official statements. They were adults. I was a juvenile. So, and I will tell you, I will not speak to anything that I don't absolutely remember. There are a lot of things that I know and I believe and I think, but I would never tell something that I don't know that's true.
But we have a lot of facts.
We do have a lot of facts.
And I'm a believer in that too.
Me too.
I don't believe in news media, convicting someone. I don't. But it's been 38 years
A
of
long
this.
time.
And it's crazy at this point.
And every time we've looked at it, like you said, they've said there are no other suspects.
Yeah, no other suspects.
There's no
other suspects.
There's no other motive. There's no other suspects. As far as we're concerned, the case is solved. There was just a problem taking it to court.
And hopefully that problem's been resolved. And I've asked that question and I'm waiting on that answer. So we're hoping for that.
You bet.
And this time I want to show you guys this motive. It rocked me to the core. It's had me, because once I found, your friend Chris found all your statements. She's got notes, people. She's got notes and she knows her stuff, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Chris
but
is
she
the
found your
best.
statements, and
She's been there since day one too.
And you have
Chris.
a group. You have and I hope this group grows. I hope this town comes behind your family on this.
Thank you.
But when I read your dad's statement, because I'd heard you guys say, like, there's premeditation here, and there's, the mom was involved. And I remember thinking, okay, I got to click this, I got to click this. And I kept reading the papers and I kept sifting through. And when I read your dad's statement, it all came together.
Yeah.
And so this one, we're going to be talking about the motive. And so we're going to be telling you a little bit the story of before the murder. And our next one is I'm going to touch base on the day that it happened. And we'll be showing you the evidence throughout this. But this one is Gary and Pat's statement. If you know those people, which many of you do, there is no lie in these statements. There's not. And so I'm going to depict a story, and it's an evil story. It's one that's going to be hard for you guys to really comprehend, because it's really hard for normal, ethical people to realize that there's people like this out there. But you've got to hear this, and you really need to take a second look and not just walk past this. But they met in 1984
at church camp,
and on and off for about a year. Yeah. And ended up, he joined the Air Force, went out to Vegas. But in about December, they got engaged.
Yeah. They broke up for a while when he joined the service. Long distance relationships are tough. But then over time, they got to talking again, corresponding with letters and talking on the phone some. Of course, we all paid for long distance back then, so that was limited, but a lot of correspondence. And then when Matt came home in December of 85, he proposed, and we started planning a wedding. We were all tickled to death.
And your family got close, even Gary the other night. It's kind of like I think about me and my husband's family, because you're even best friends with my aunt. I call her my aunt because if you're Adam's aunt, you're my aunt. That's just how our families are. We're those big families that they just come together.
It's not exclusive.
It's not.
The more the merrier.
Yeah. And even talking to Gary the other day, he expressed that. He embraced them. Even though they had some crazy religious beliefs, and he even expressed that the other night, it was just a little more extensive than he liked. I think it's how he kind of portrayed that.
We grew up in the Assemblies of God. We all did.
Yeah.
So nobody's proud of a divorce. Mm-mm. Nobody's proud when a marriage fails. That's not something you walk away from feeling good.
But they had strict religious beliefs, Jody. They had beliefs that if you were to divorce, you can't divorce. No, that was their belief. You cannot divorce. If you marry somebody, if you cannot marry another until that man dies. That's literally the belief of that. And I want to make a point here because we're talking about a piece of paper. And this is important. Remember this, because this is about somebody unhappy with her little decision that she made. And it's about a piece of paper. And it doesn't make sense, right? Because if you're that religious and you feel like that you fear God so much that if I was to divorce somebody, I'm going to hell. The irony that you're going to hear in this is mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing because honestly, what happened here, there was no fear of God. There was fear of what people would think. And there was fear of daddy. And it cost a man's life. And so in December, they get engaged. In May, they get married. She moves down to Vegas. Everything's good so that everybody thinks, all in dandy. And then in July, the Addams family contacts you guys. Hey, let's go make a trip out to Vegas. Let's go visit Sally and Matt. There is no talk of anything wrong. There's no problems. We're going to go have a good visit. We're going to go visit Matt and Sally. So you guys hop in the RV like you're going to go have a great time. And you travel 1,500 miles. Nobody says a word. Nobody says a word. You're how old?
14.
14 at the time.
Just turned 14.
You go down to Vegas. You get there. Sally's on a balcony in a mess. And she automatically runs to her parents and they go have a meeting. The next meeting that occurs, and this really angers me, so you're gonna see it's my emotion coming out because the next meeting that occurs is Gary and Pat, Betty and Junior, and they're having a meeting because Sally has called them out there. She wants to go home, and she told mommy and daddy that it's because Matt was gambling, Matt went out with a woman, and Matt was drinking and this and that she needed out. And so they thought they could talk Junior into allowing this for these reasons. You read it in the statement.
Yeah.
And we'll show you guys this. If you follow our page, like I'm transparent. I'm transparent. I like to show you what I'm talking about.
And I didn't know this at the time.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I was young and mom and dad, I think.
They were detailed statements.
They were detailed statements. And my mom, I was protected. I had good mom and dad. And I was protected from this junk. And so I didn't know a lot of it.
You were kind of shoved off to the pool.
Yeah, I went to the pool.
You were shoved to the
I
pool.
took the puppy and went to the pool for a few days, basically. We did a few things. We saw a few things, and I got to see Matt some, but that wasn't vacation. We found out. We weren't there for vacation.
And they never even told you. They blindsided you. This family was good at blindsides.
Totally.
Let me tell you that.
We had no idea that we were going out there to counsel a marriage difficulty.
So in this meeting, and this is how things were back then, guys, like extreme religious, the parents are really involved. Like I couldn't imagine my parents having a meeting over my marriage now. You know what I mean? But that happened. And they're discussing things and blame all this stuff on Matt. And then his idea was that he was going to be sending her. He didn't want a divorce. He said, no, she's going to divorce. No, not allowed. But I'm going to send her off to live with, who was it?
Oh, she was just going to go home for a little while. She was going to go home for a while.
I think you're right. And let her think about it. And he was going to revisit, right? Next meeting they have now involves Matt and Sally. Mm-hmm. So Matt and Sally come into this meeting. Pat and Gary express to Matt what was just said. And Matt says, absolutely not. That is outrageous. And every statement says her exact words were, well, I lied. I'm just spoiled. I want to go home. Is her exact words. Daddy says no. Can't. And then next day, I'm just mind blown. I'm mind blown. And I'm mind blown because I'm going to talk to you about some statements too. Don't you let me forget that because it's important. It's important when they're establishing who Matt was. And her statement denies this. Her statement defies all of that already.
Matt was flawed. We're all flawed.
He was 18, 19 years old.
He was a 19-year-old serviceman.
Who's not flawed?
We're flawed.
We're all flawed.
But he was a good guy, and I'll tell you, he loved his wife.
Yeah.
We loved her. I want to be clear about that. Jump forward a few months after this happened, when Vegas PD came to us with their evidence, we were completely floored and in complete denial. Nope, you've got it wrong. Keep looking. Couldn't be her. We don't believe that.
Was.
It was.
People can surprise you.
Yeah.
You know, and in that meeting, after that meeting, Daddy says you got to stay, you know, because now she admits she lied in front of everybody and that Matt didn't do any of that. The next day, everybody goes sightseeing. You, Gary, Pat, Matt, Jr. But Betty and Sally stayed home. All day long, Betty and Sally stayed home. And then you guys go home.
It was a little different trip home than it was going out.
I can imagine, you know,
In an
I can
RV,
imagine.
5 people in an RV.
And talking to Gary, like Pat was hot.
Yeah. I think at the time my dad considered, I didn't know the severity of it, but we considered flying home. But we didn't. We drove home because that's who we are.
And so then
we worked things out.
And then after this, I'd say it was a week before he died.
No, that was in July.
That was in July. No, I'm talking about what I'm about to talk about. The trip of them coming back and selling the truck. Weekend. That was Labor Day weekend, about a week before his death, because he hadn't been back since, or you had not been back to Vegas after that Vegas trip. No. And so they make a trip back down to Missouri because he's selling the truck back to Gary.
He had bought a Toyota pickup from my dad. And the way I understand it is he was just making payments to Dad. The title was never even transferred or anything. Dad kept the insurance and Matt was just making payments. And for whatever reason, I don't know the exact reason, but he sold the truck back. So Matt and Sally drove to Viburnum where we lived. And the plan was to fly back to Las Vegas. They brought the truck home. Then they flew back to Las Vegas on Labor Day evening, Monday evening on the 1st of September.
But when Sally visits home, Sally goes home, you know, because Sally was a type. And when I talked to your dad the other night and then I read his statement, Sally was a little, she was a type that, not judging anybody that does, maybe, but holding her mom's hand, walking through the store at 18 years old.
Yeah.
And when they go visit, she's got to have her head in her mama's lap. Like, sorry, Mom, but that's weird. That ain't happening. Not going to happen. It's it's that kind of situation.
It was a little different. I'm close. I mean, I don't know of a lot of families that are closer than mine. But it was a little odd. But she always
went home.
I'll tell you this, if I came from Las Vegas and came 1,500 miles and was within 30 miles of my parents, I would have seen them.
But she always stayed home. She always went home.
She was always.
This time, when they go back.
And it was just for 3 days.
This is the RV. I mean, this is after the RV incident. This is a week before Matt was killed. They come back in Missouri, and she stayed at Gary and Pat. She didn't go to her family's at all. And it was weird. And now that I look back on it, they're dumb. They did that so that it would look like there was no collusion happening, but really smart people understand you don't break a normal routine, you know, to make it look like something. And when you see this wide open, it's there.
It was odd. Don't get me wrong. We were tickled to have the time with Matt. I mean, we had a great weekend. It was just for a weekend. They got in, I think, on a Friday night, stayed Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. And went back home. It was just for a weekend. We were tickled for the time, but it was odd that they didn't see her parents at all.
Other things happening
30
during this
miles
time.
away.
Other things, you know, because there's a lot to this motive. And I want to tell it all in this first chapter. There's a lot to this motive. But other things that were happening during this time was Matt was an avid shooter. He just was an outdoorsman. You know, they would go out to... Is it Charleston? Why did I lose
Mount
that?
Charleston.
Right? Mount Charleston. And they do long range shooting. They'd go camping, you know, different things like that. And in her statement states that the murder weapon that only has her palm print and fingerprints and his on it, and that an avid outdoorsman wipes their gun down after every use. Let me just make that note. She says that she shot it. He showed her once, about a couple weeks ago. You know, a couple weeks ago was the last time that she shot it, and she's But when you look at these statements from the people that knew Matt, that was servicemen beside him, there's a statement in here that talks about how, you know, for one, he would just go home to his wife. And even in her statement, she was asked, does he drink? No. Does he go out? No, only when he hunts. You know, it's just ludicrous, the things that you see.
A lot of discrepancies.
A lot of discrepancies. But this statement says,
people who have nothing to hide don't lie.
they don't. But his statement says that Matt was so excited recently that his wife had really, worked up, was really liking to shoot, was really interested in shooting, trying to get him to go shooting, and he's like, she's getting pretty good for a beginner. This is a statement that we have in here, and the same statement says that Matt had just got a check from his dad. Yeah, he had money. He always had a $20 bill in his pocket, and that he had just recently went home, sold his truck, and got a check. He got a check for the difference of the loan and what he sold the truck for. And a day before his death, they went and looked at a dune buggy because they only had one vehicle at this time. This is 1 week. Right now, we're talking about week right before. So she says she don't shoot with him maybe once 2 weeks ago. This guy says, no, he said she was really wanting to pick it up after your RV trip. Guys, think about this. This is what I'm talking about. Think about this. And when you look at what he says, she wanted to go shooting. She was asking him to go shooting. And then he received a cash check from his dad. This is all in a week. Came back. He was looking at a dune buggy. He needed a vehicle. There's statements from the individuals that he went to go buy the dune buggy from the day before. And he looks at the dune buggy and he says, well, I'll discuss it with my wife and I'll get back with you tomorrow. But he was never going to get that dune buggy. And then when you see how this plays out, it's astronomical to think that people are this evil in this world. And they are. Because she took Matt out shooting. She asked Matt to teach her shooting. And the day, that you talked to him, the last time you ever spoke to him, on that day, he said to you, yeah, Sally's wanting to go shooting.
Yeah,
but her story's all jacked up.
I talked to him after church, and they were headed back up to the mountains to go shoot. That's what he told me. He had called home because it was my parents' anniversary.
Ironically, it's also Jane's birthday. Yeah. Funny how things happen, right? It's funny how things happen.
It is.
But when you look at this motive, and then in her statement, she says that he didn't get any money from his dad. No, it was just that the payments went away. I wonder where that cash went.
I don't know. I don't remember that.
She also said they didn't go out shooting that day. They were just going to go hit some golf balls. But funny how there was 26 casings found at that site. That gun holds 10.
Yeah, they'd been shooting.
Supposedly hops in a vehicle, I already told you that part, with some random guy at some random gas station. I have no idea who that is. But he forgot his ammo. Guys, this is the story we're telling. And this is chapter 1. And the motive behind this, and the statements are here, the facts are clear. And when we look at the grand jury and everything that's happened with the most notorious Oscar Goodman that they just raised a statue in honor of, this is why some people fight statues. I'm gonna have to look into that a little more. I'm gonna have to look into that a little more, because ethical people, they need one, but people like this do not.
No.
And you were suppressed by money. And when I looked at your dad the other night and they had exhausted all effort, how are you guys going to travel back and forth to Vegas like that? How are you going to take care of your other 2 children? So I want to say something right now, because those of you out there that say that if that was my child, I'd have done this. Let me tell you something. You don't know. And when you have 2 other children on this earth, when I think of Pat and Gary, I think of the strength that they had to have to be able to do that, to give you guys the ability to have a good life. Because I don't even think that 4 years ago, we might have won. I think that it's happening now for a reason.
Yeah.
And you would have exhausted all, and you did.
I've told that story for 38 years, that my parents, they may have laid down on the floor and screamed and kicked whenever we left. But they never missed a beat as far as their responsibility, as far as their Christianity. Because let me tell you something, this is not an attack on Christianity.
Oh no! Oh
it's
no!
not.
No!
It's
or
not.
the church,
or the church, or the
church.
Assemblies of God, or the church. It's not.
But Jody, what it
I want to
is-
be clear about that.
It's not.
It's
But we got to be accountable. And the
Yes.
idea that we make the perception that if something bad happens in the church, and if we're loud about it, then people are going to think the church is bad and they won't come. So we're going to bury it under a rock. People will respect you guys more if you don't do that. This family talked a church into backing them. Ran this family out of the town. And I don't blame those people either, because I feel like sometimes we are blindly misguided and we look for power, and power is not important. Ethics are important. Power and money mean nothing. Do you guys realize that somebody invented that?
I can tell you, if I had done something like this, my mother and dad would have taken me in their arms and bawled their heads off and said, "We're going to the police station now."
Yeah.
That's
but your
it.
parents
You
never
did- you're
wavered
free
on
to
their
choo-
faith.
No, you're free to choose. You're not free from the consequences of your choices.
And I can't say what I would do because I wasn't there, right? But I would hope, and I say it all the time. I've said it about my boys. Like, I tell people, and if my kid gets thrown in jail and I try to bail him out, you better like reel me back in because he's sitting there. I mean, your parents are that way.
They're
they
fair.
just are, and they never lost their faith.
They never
They
lost
never
their
gave up on
faith.
church.
And they didn't give up on being parents to Mitch and I. Mitch was married and grown, but I never once felt like I wasn't enough for my mom and dad to keep living. 3 weeks after Matt was murdered, my mother's mom passed away unexpectedly. So think about that for a minute.
Oh my!
And the strength of my mom. I mean,
I didn't even know that.
I just lost my mom. Whew, yesterday was tough. Cried all day long. I just could not get my stuff together. I can't imagine the compounding of losing my mom and my child, and in such a horrific manner. And then being faced with all of this and expected to, and I'll tell you, like I said, my mom may have laid on the floor and screamed after I left and cried out to God that she didn't want to go on, but that was never on the outside. And Mitch and I never felt for 1 second like we weren't enough for my mom to go on.
Because they're good people.
They're
real good people.
They're the best.
They're good people.
Yeah, they are.
And to give a little bit more, there was a statement in here, and it drives me nuts because when you read the statements from the people that surrounded Matt, even then, I think there was one girl statement that said maybe, oh, well, yeah, he would have probably got with anybody that wanted. I mean, he was 18 years old. I'm sure he flirted with a ton of girls. Like, come on now.
Yeah, he was
We all
cute.
know that. Like, you should look at Kelby and Peyton and Jackson. And I mean, come on. But when you look at the root of the people that said when that man got married and she came down there, he went home.
He was.
They
in
couldn't
love.
keep him at the barracks for longer than 30 minutes.
No,
he wouldn't drink more than one beer.
He was madly in love. He really was.
Wouldn't drink more than
And
one
like
beer.
I said, we all were. They met, and we.
No, there's a quote he said, Jody. I got to say this quote because it kills me to the core. Because if you really think about this, and I'm going to synopsis this at the very end to give you what I've read. I'm going to tell it quickly what's happened. But when you read this quote, they said there was a time where all of us guys were talking about our old ladies. And Matt said, I don't have an old lady. I've got a wife. And what he had was a murderer. And it just makes me ill. Because when you see and when you look at this was Daddy Jr. wouldn't let little spoiled diva out of the marriage that she just got herself into. And now she's in Vegas and they're living paycheck to paycheck. And she can't get all her fancy things. And she's just unhappy with life. And so when Daddy told her no, they didn't fear God. They had no fear for God. You don't murder someone if you fear God. You don't collude and plan a cold-blooded murder and set up the situation. How do you do that and fear God? So the answer was murdering a man instead of getting rid of a piece of paper. And we have to understand that is exactly what's happened here.
Yeah.
When we talk about they go to Las Vegas in an RV Last day they're there, Betty and Sally stayed together all day long. Next visit to town, little spoiled little daughter that can't keep her head out of her mama's lap. Don't even want to go see her.
Peculiar, isn't it?
And then a week later, he's shot dead with his own gun that she had him train her how to use. That is evil of another level. And this is not a lie. And currently today, I am waiting on the homicide detective that is currently assigned to this case. And I am not playing around. And we need your support. We need you to share this. Because that's why I'm loud. Nothing happens if you're not loud. Nothing. And if this just dies off, and if we let this die off, it's going to be another one of those things that where we're going to get exhausted. And part of it is when you lose support, when people around you are like, ooh, I don't know if I do that. Just don't even say it to me. I'm fine if you won't do that. I'm fine if you won't do that. But I need strength around me because we ain't shutting up. And I've emailed them every day, and I'm going to continue to email every day until we get some things done. And the next time we come here, we're going to be talking about September 7th. And it doesn't end here. Like, this was bad. It doesn't end there. It's all over the place. It's all over the place. And the only reason that this was never done is for money. They were able to pay a big old lawyer. They had 2 lawyers. You know that, right?
Yeah.
They had 2 lawyers.
Yeah.
Oscar Goodman, Max Price, Missouri Connection. And this is a sick story, but this is a sick story that needs to have a good ending. And I want Gary to see it. And so we want your help.
He's 81.
You want to send some emails? Send me a message. I'll send you a list of the emails that you want to send. You want to be involved? Get on my page. I'll share stuff. Ask questions. I'll answer you. I promise you that.
So will I.
Yeah, we will.
So will my girls.
We will. Because we have a mission. And if you know me, I do what I say. And we're going to get this done. But we appreciate this town's support. And we appreciate the amount of messages that we've already received and the amount of help that has already been, sent to us because we're going to Vegas.
I can't thank you enough. Really.
I love you. You don't even need to say that right now.
From the bottom of my heart.
There's a reason we got back together. There's a reason you became my nurse.
A lot of people want justice. It's different when you get somebody who'll really fight for it. And I've wanted to for years. There was some hesitation. And every time I called, every time I emailed, I was just met with resistance. And, Oscar Goodman and his wife have been the mayors of Las Vegas. We'll go into that. But for over 25 years.
Chapter.
So after he left private practice, he became the mayor. And his wife literally, talk about ironic. I didn't know this. I knew that his wife was going out of office and that there would be a new mayor. It happened last Wednesday, correct? Was it last Wednesday?
I don't know what day it is, but do you remember how odd that was? Because that was the night. This had all just started, right? I'd learned this on, I think, a Saturday or Sunday. And then Wednesday, I start digging into who's this Oscar Goodman. And everybody do your homework. Look him up.
Look it up.
He's got a podcast. He's got all kinds of things out there. He's proud of his notorious clients. And so it was so crazy that day when I looked it up, new mayor.
Shelley Berkeley, correct?
She got my email too. She's got 2 emails so far. So
go Shelley.
Just got put into office. Just got put that day.
That day.
I messaged you that. You didn't even know that yet.
No, I didn't know it. I knew that Carolyn Goodman was going out of office. I did not know who had been elected. I don't do this every day. I can't live this every day.
I know.
And
I've told
hard.
you this.
And especially right now with my mother's passing and my family needs me.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't live this every day and do this every day. But I'm thankful for someone being interested in it again.
You don't even have to say that.
Well,
and I hope, and I've told you 1,000 times, you back off when you need to back off because you are grieving. You
Very
are
much.
absolutely grieving. But I will tell you that I felt nothing but a fire under me. So we're going to recap do a quick recap, and then we're going to be back because we're going to be getting this done, and we're going to get this out to the people. But to recap this was the motive, guys. This reeked motive. An RV trip, Sally upset, wants out of her marriage. She doesn't like this. She makes up a story, even admits she makes up a story. Then fast forward 1 week prior, goes and visits, doesn't go to her own family's house. That's crazy. And then turns around and comes home and shoots her husband after she had him train her on how to use his weapon.
She got to come home.
She did. And she's been here far too long in a comfy setting. And I changed that. We changed that real quick, Jody. She ain't comfy no more, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Me too.
I feel bad for the community that is also grieving. But remember that we didn't have a choice to grieve. So you can't just deflect things that you don't want to grieve because you don't want to grieve them.
Yeah.
You still have to accept truth. So we appreciate everyone. Share this podcast. Help us if you want to. Get on our page. We are serious and we'll keep you updated. I've even been daily updating on where we're kind of at, and I'll get better at it if you guys really want to know.
Jaisha, my family has always said, too, we had to have this proven to us. Don't take our word for it.
Let
Read
us prove you.
Study it. Read it. The facts are there.
They're there.
The facts are there.
And they're clear.
I've prayed for 38 years that if we're wrong, reveal it. I would never, my family's fair. I would never want someone to pay for a crime that they didn't commit.
Mm-mm.
It's horrible. That's an atrocity. But it's time that there's some justice in that. Absolutely
I think people that
not.
know me know that I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't 100%
I know.
think I know the facts. You know what I mean?
Same.
Like I wouldn't. And people that do know me as a person know that there's no way I would do this to somebody and a town and a community if there was no basis for it.
Yeah.
But there is.
Yeah. I'm also thankful that, and I've told this, I've said this 1,000 times, we've chosen to be joyful.
Yeah.
And to have a good life.
We have to.
We have to. We're not going to let this ruin our lives or let injustice ruin our lives. We love each other. We're happy and we're blessed. We've got a good life.
But you also don't live a victim role. You never have.
No, we're not going to do that.
No.
But I'll tell you, victims are way at a disadvantage in our legal system. We can go into that later too.
Yeah,
about
we probably will.
A trip made to Las Vegas that was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
But
and we'll be going to Las Vegas.
Victims don't have the rights that accused have often.
No.
It stinks.
It does. But we appreciate you.
Thanks,
share
guys.
this and share it. And keep up to date with what's going on. And we'll be shooting the next one soon.